Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another SLG Meetup. Your host Alvaro Nunez to bring you another successful and interesting guest. His name is Adam Rosenfeld and he's the founder and principal of the Grauman Rosenfeld Group within the agency. He's a very successful real estate broker with over $3 billion of sales in his career. He's based in Los Angeles and you probably have seen him at the famous TV show on Netflix called Buying Beverly Hills. He has won multiple accolades and he's going to tell us all about how he has become such a successful icon in real estate and everything from the show, the trends, and the insights on how you can also become a superstar within your industry. So exciting to have him here with us today. There he is. We're matching, brother.
That,
We're matching.
Yeah, man. I know we didn't coordinate it today, but
yeah,
it works out perfectly.
I love it. That's amazing. Good to see you. How's everything?
Man, everything is really good. Really good. No complaints. All good stuff in our world. How you doing?
You look a little bit better than last time we saw each other here in Miami, yeah?
Yeah, that was a little rough, man. I think a lot of people think that a lot of these reality shows are super scripted, and admittedly, some parts are produced. But that was a very real moment for me. The night before was a rough evening, and when I saw you, I was a little worse for wear. But that was over a year ago. It's crazy.
That was over a year ago. Time flies. And just to put it on context for everybody, last time that Adam and I saw each other, it was at a beautiful 20 million plus listing where we were shooting for the second season of Buying Beverly Hills here in Miami.
Yeah,
and
you were
enjoying Miami. That's for sure.
Miami will do that. It will do that. I'm a Miami native. I grew up there and I lived in South Beach for many years. And after spending 12 years here, I think I kind of forgot what Miami nightlife can do to you. In my older age, I've really settled down, and I'm not one to visit local nightlife as much anymore. And Miami always shows me a good time every time I'm there.
Well, you're always welcome. This is home for you, and we'll show you a good time every time you come. But in the meantime, you moved into Los Angeles.
Yep.
And not only you moved in there, but you became a very successful real estate professional with over $3 billion on sales in your career. You founded with John, the Grauman Rosenfeld Group. I love you guys. You two are amazing and you've been killing it in the game. So tell us a little bit on how the transition took place, because not everybody knows about how you got started. Now they see you on Netflix, this good looking guy selling multi-million-dollar homes and all these successes behind. But what's the story behind? How did you actually got started in real estate?
It was a long journey. It was not a journey I ever thought I would go on. I'm being really candid. When I got into the business, it's not a business that I really respected a lot, to be genuine with you guys. I came from a legal background, so I went to law school back in Miami after college and didn't practice for a very long period of time. I think anyone gets to know me understands that, you know, my natural personality and my skill set is really meant to be more relating to people. And being in the legal fields, at least for me, I was sitting behind a desk just typing away all day long, and I didn't like it. I had some circumstances in life where I was trying to figure out what to do, and honestly, I felt like I was lost for a while. I was living in New York. I actually thought I was going to go to medical school, so I went back to, I guess, undergrad, and I took a bunch of courses and took the MCAT a bunch of times, and that was a really trying process. And in the process of applying, I came out to Los Angeles to visit my brother, who had kind of moved here on a whim back in 2011. And I remember we were sitting on the couch one day and I was trying to figure out if I was going to go back to school or if I wanted to transition in life. And we were actually watching $1 Million Listing. And at that point, I thought maybe I would go into commercial real estate. And my brother, being the consummate big brother, basically looked at me and said, this is what you should do. If these guys can do this, you can do this. And I think a lot of people have the same kind of story, because at least when you look at Los Angeles now, it used to be that, you know, everybody moved out here to get into Hollywood or get into modeling, you know, try to make it in that big world. And now I think because of the popularity of these TV shows, you see more people coming to Los Angeles to try to break into real estate. Something like 30,000 agents out here. But I thought with my education and legal background, it would be a very easy transition. It seemed like a good idea. Because I had that degree, I didn't have to go through all the coursework. I was able to just take the exam and get licensed. And I think I was very naive in assuming that, you know, people would just be lining up to work with me, because, you know, in the field of real estate, the requirements to actually become licensed are very low. And I think that's why there has become such a crazy stigma in the business. You know, there are so many licensed agents. Everybody knows 10 people that are licensed. And I learned very quickly that it was not going to be so easy. Being in a market that is not my home market, I just didn't have the connections or relationships here to hit the ground running. So I humbled myself pretty quickly, and I went to work as an assistant for my first year in the business, working with a high producing agent. That was even hard to do just because nobody would really give me the time of day without any experience, regardless of what my educational background was. But one guy gave me a shot, and I learned a lot in that year, a lot in terms of how I would conduct business, and a lot in terms of things I would never want to do in conducting a business. And everyone has a different style. And I realized pretty quickly that to enter the general populace as a listing agent or even a buyer's representative was going to be tough given the amount of competition out there. And again, just my lack of relationships. So I needed to create a business model and a niche that I thought would work well for me. Mm-hmm. And there's this unwritten rule that if you find them a property, at the very least, you're going to get a piece of the back end, and that will only help to further grow and cultivate business. And I started with my very shy personality walking onto construction sites, and I would try to find the owners or the contractors and very humbly just state, look, I'm not trying to get your listing. I respect the fact that you already have a relationship specifically on this property, and I by no means want to step on toes. But if you're doing this one, I'm guessing you're likely going to want to do more, and I would love to be able to hustle some off-market opportunities for you and see what I can come up with. And that's what I did. And I started just building relationships with other agents in the business, which I think is so often overlooked. People oftentimes think this is a very adversarial business. And with certain personalities, it can be, but when it's really done right, it shouldn't be that way. People typically in our business are working mutually together, regardless of what side you're on, to close a deal, because that's obviously how we all get paid. So I started gathering information, kind of acting as a private investigator, and I would come up with these deals and then bring them to developers. And at first it was tough because I would bring them anything I came across off market, and some of them would get really annoyed with me, like, why are you sending me this junk? There's no money in it. So I really had to learn, what the cost of land was, what the cost of construction was, what was it going to cost to finance, and then reverse engineer all of that to understand how much profit was left in the deal after you remove closing costs, commissions, et cetera. And I started to be able to really hone in on what made sense. And in my second year is when I did my first transaction. And then it started to snowball from there. I just started doing transaction after transaction. And it ultimately grew into a great business because as you start getting those deals, again, they become listings. And then when you get those listings, you can market yourself around those listings. And very fortunately for me, my trajectory just kind of catapulted very quickly. And sometimes I think it's better to be lucky than good. And there was a lot of luck in terms of the preliminary years to my success.
Yeah, you earned that luck by working relentlessly on something that you believed in, because it's a hell of a story, and a lot of people can really resonate with it because we have often come across a situation where we are not satisfied with our current career, and because of the fear of leaving that comfort zone, we keep on doing the same thing. And you decided to dive into a completely different industry. You saw that TV show with your brother, you followed that advice, and then you just focus on that niche market and religiously kept on going, believing that eventually it will work. And look at you, the compound effect, right? It started to keep on compounding, and here you are now selling some of the most incredible homes. Now, my question is, did you ever imagine when you were watching $1 Million Listing that you will end up also being on a show?
No, not in a million years. It was kind of a surreal moment, and I talk about it now laughing.
Hey, there he is. What's going on, dude? My man.
It was kind of surreal looking back after doing it and thinking back to that moment. I guess it was 12, 13 years ago, and how things come full circle. And in all candidness, I'm not the most spiritual guy, but moments like that, it just kind of feels like serendipity, and it's a pinch yourself moment. And to some degree, I guess everything does happen for a reason. But it's been pretty cool, and it was a long road to get there. The first season was announced, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 months after I partnered with John and came to the agency. And to be honest, I wanted no part of it. I don't want to say terrified of it, but I was afraid that it was going to be another one of these reality real estate shows that was really just kind of foundationalized in drama and petty bickering and fighting. And, you know, no disrespect to Selling Sunset, because I love Jason and I've watched that show in the past, but if that's what this show was going to be, I really had no interest in doing it. I tended to be more under the radar and low key, and that's kind of how I like to live my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a couple scenes with John in that first season, just kind of as a background character. And after watching it, it really felt like it was more benign and a pretty decent show. So when season 2 came around and they asked again, you know, I spoke to John about it, and after some lobbying from him, decided to just give it a go. And honestly, no regrets. I had so much fun doing it. The cast is great. We all actually get along really well.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think we created what was an entertaining program for people to watch, and the feedback on it has been nothing short of great. I've been, you know, really fortunate. I feel really blessed to having been a part of it, and hopefully it keeps going. We don't know yet, but we'll see where it goes.
And that's an interesting statement, because you come from this background of being shy, under the radar, not wanting to put yourself out there, and you just became a really charismatic character on TV. People really love who you represent and who you are as a real estate professional, but also as a human. So it's one of those things that it helps you to even put out there more who you are, and it becomes like a magnet for opportunities. Because I'm sure that being in that show and putting yourself more out there, more opportunities have come your way.
That was the thought behind it. You know, it was, look, obviously there's ego in this business, and anytime you're going to be on a TV show, you have to kind of put your most charismatic self forward. And I was really happy with the way, at least I was portrayed. There were some precarious situations I was put into that I was not aware of when it was all happening, but the overall result, I think, was good. And obviously I am not a featured member of the cast, because it revolves mostly around Mauricio and his family. But I'm really happy with my role there. I always want to be seen as kind of the consummate professional in the room, and whatever little personal segments and tidbits they get into, I try to keep as much of that filtered as possible. But overall, I just, you know, want to come across as somebody who really appreciates what he does, loves his work, hopefully has a sentiment of sincerity and humbleness and modesty, because those are the things I value in life. And, you know, as you're growing up and you're kind of cultivating your personality, there's the natural person who you are, and then the rest of it is modeled after people that you truly admire. And the people I've always admired in life, you know, swing a real big stick, but they speak really quietly. And I'm never someone who really gets rattled. I never lose my cool. I always kind of seem to be pretty even. And I'm always just kind of focused on the big picture. And I tell this to John all the time, I'm very outcome independent. I do my job to the best of my ability, and whatever happens, happens, you know, but I don't get dug in or lost in any one deal. And when it comes to filming the show, you know, I hope it came across with me being my kind of authentic self, and I feel like it did.
Oh no, 100%. And you said it right there. Sometimes in the show they do the edit, so it kind of changes a little bit on who you actually are, but it comes across as reliable, passionate, and knowledgeable, which are some of the characteristics that really represent who you are and your personal brand.
Yep.
So this is one of the things that I also wanted to talk about, because for a lot of people that don't have access to be on a TV show, or that have that similar personality of being a little bit more shy and have that struggle of being in front of a camera, because anybody can be on a camera, right, on social media. But when it comes to building your brand and landing more leads, because it didn't take you one night to all of a sudden start selling these multi-million-dollar homes. It was that compound effect, going into those construction sites, trying to build those partnerships, work with other agents. But what would you say has been kind of your go-to to lead or to get those top leads?
So for me, it's always been my sphere, you know, just the people in my world. There's a lot of strategies that work in real estate. Some are tried and true and very old school, like cold calling and door knocking. That was never something I was really comfortable with. You know, maybe I would have been successful doing it, but I always kind of relied on my personality, you know, my dogmatic approach to be successful, and kind of never giving up and always trying to figure out what the next best solution for me was. But ultimately, I think what worked for me was figuring out, again, my niche. And it started with developers, and then it spanned into working with other professionals. And the core of our business now is really working with business managers, attorneys, anyone who essentially has a book of business that really needs a resource like us to essentially help to cater their book, and someone that they can go to that they really can trust and rely on to know the job is going to get done, and ultimately make them look like heroes. So, you know, I think that's been something that's been wonderful for us. So now when we're out prospecting, we're not necessarily looking to pick up one client here or there. For every business manager or attorney we pick up, as kind of a trusted asset and resource, you're picking up 30 clients, 40 clients, depending on what their book of business is. And for me, it's always been about working smarter in addition to working harder. And that's been the core of our lead generation at this point.
I love it. If you had to look back to 2011 when you made that decision, when you were watching that show and you were starting all over again, would you do something differently?
No, I don't think so. I'm ecstatic and thrilled with kind of the way my life path has turned out and the trajectory I've been on. Ultimately, I love what I do, Alvaro. You know, like every day I wake up and I get excited to go to work. I'm excited to be around people. I'm blessed and fortunate that I get to walk and represent some of the most incredible properties that, you know, people have ever seen or built. I love the artistry of it. I've been fortunate enough to do some of my own developments. And that's one of the best things about real estate. In addition to working as a broker every day, look, real estate is like, it's like legal insider trading in a sense, because I see the opportunities before the market sees opportunities. And I see the best opportunities before the market sees the best opportunities. And there are certain deals that are so good, it's like, why sell them off to somebody else if I could take it down myself and ultimately create the vision that I know is going to make this the highest, best use for this project. And we've done a few of those at this point. And because I've worked with so many developers in my time, I really understand that segment and facet of the business. And I'm starting to kind of not necessarily transition because I want to do this forever. I genuinely love what I do. And I think I've gotten to a point where I'm fortunate that I can kind of pick and choose my clients. And I want to do that forever, but I want to have other kind of facets of creativity and things I can do to continue to grow and further myself in this field. And development has been one of those things that I'm really passionate about and I want to keep doing for the long term.
Is that what you see yourself doing more long term, starting to become more of a developer and investor?
I do, without question. You know, it starts, you know, with modest roots, and you kind of start with smaller projects and little quick remodels, some paint and some change of stone on islands and cabinets. And then eventually you move on to full on remodels, and then it becomes ground up construction. And, you know, sometimes I have this kind of concept or idea of moving it to different kind of segments and aspects of real estate. Ultimately, I'd love to be in hospitality. And I think true long-term vision would be kind of more a bi-coastal life where I'm spending half my time in Miami and potentially half my time here in Los Angeles, the two cities that absolutely have my heart and the two places I'd really like to live long-term.
Well, that's amazing. I definitely see you doing that. It fits perfectly that whole storyline that you've been building, and I see you doing that. You're already doing it. So whatever we can do to support you in this side of the country, for sure, count us in. And just to kind of get your brain a little bit on what's going on right now with the real estate market in Los Angeles. How do you see it? Is it something that is currently stable, unstable, growing? What's your thoughts on it?
We have some unique challenges here that I think are different than probably other markets in the country. You know, sure, we are subject to the same issues that the rest of the country deals with in terms of the higher interest rate environment that we currently have right now, which hopefully will be changing soon. So over the last couple of years, since there's been, you know, kind of quantitative tightening, our market has slowed down quite a bit. You know, COVID was an interesting thing for us with the great reshuffling and people moving all over the country. And obviously California has state income tax. So there have been a lot of people that have been wanting to leave the state to go to places like Florida or Texas, et cetera. But at the same time, there have been a lot of people coming to the state. You know, when you live in a place like New York, which is obviously a wonderful city, but can really drag on you, you know, when something like COVID happens and you no longer have to be in the city you work, essentially you can work from a computer anywhere. Los Angeles is a great option for people. And if you're okay paying the weather tax, as we call it, the quality of life here is really nice. But in addition to those issues, we have some other issues. So there's this Measure ULA, which is a very specific issue to Los Angeles, which people have classified as a mansion tax. It's actually not a mansion tax because it covers every sector of real estate. And just to make it concise, essentially what it is roughly a 5% gross tax on the sale of any property north of $5 million. And again, that can be residential, commercial, industrial, hospitality, doesn't matter. And that's been a real drag in terms of the local economy because a lot of owners are very disincentivized to sell property. So as an example, if you bought a property for $12 million and now you need to go and sell it and you want to sell it, not even want to sell it, but you have to sell it for 10 because of market conditions. Well, okay, you've lost $2 million, but now you're paying essentially $500,000 right off the top which brings you down to 9.5. So it's really kind of created a dent in terms of the local infrastructure, in terms of how we operate and where we're going. And there's been a lot of pushback on that, but ultimately no resolve. And not to say that it's all bad. There's a lot of good that potentially comes out of a program like ULA, as long as the city is using money as they say they are. But there's very little checks and balances here in LA, and it's a city run by city council more so than the mayor. And we keep running into these issues. There's a new ordinance they're trying to pass right now called the Wildlife Ordinance, which is essentially an anti-mansionization ordinance, which greatly diminishes the amount of square footage you can build if you are in what's deemed the hills, or essentially north of Sunset. So again, just as another example, if you have a 2-acre flat compound in Holmby Hills of Bel Air, it used to be that you could build roughly 30,000 plus square feet. Now, with this wildlife ordinance, you would be capped at 6,000 square feet. So it's a great differential, and that also greatly affects property values. The one irony of it is you have one side of the city clamoring to get this money from ULA, which is based on purchase price and taxes. And then you have the other side that's essentially reducing the amount of square footage that can be built, which collapses property values and pulls money out of the coffers of ULA. Because if I can only build 6,000 square feet and I'm going to sell this property, well, instead of selling it for 70 or 80 million, what am I selling it for? It's greatly reduced. And then that means there's less money coming from the sale to go back to the city for ULA. So there's a lot of frustration here right now, and it's really kind of bottlenecked and slowed down the market. And ultimately, we'll see where it all ends up. But ULA is still, again, a contentious topic. Recently, it was supposed to go in front of the court for something called TPA to be passed, which is the Taxpayer Protection Act. And Governor Newsom filed an immediate lawsuit to try to essentially halt that. And the local court agreed with Governor Newsom. So now it's going to go to the Court of Appeals and potentially all the way to the Supreme Court. But we really don't know where that will ultimately end up.
Well, I mean, the most important thing is to have somebody that you can trust, that is knowledgeable, to know exactly what is going on. And that's why I think that right now your role becomes more important than ever, just so that owners and buyers understand the situation and that you can guide them directly through the best as possible. And hopefully when it comes to the laws, it will all kind of like stabilize a little bit and make more sense, so that it will benefit also the owners at that level. But it seems to be an interesting concept right now.
I would say, Alvaro, if I could give one piece of advice to people in this industry, or people aspiring to be in the industry, it's such a saturated industry and there's so much competition. So you really have to find ways to stand out. And the real true way to stand out is by providing value, really understanding the market, really understanding what's happening locally in government and in politics, and what the potential pitfalls are for every buyer and seller. And it used to be that agents were the gatekeepers of information in terms of the properties that were available. But now with the advent of Zillow and the Redfins of the world, any consumer can go online and find property. So you just sending somebody a Zillow link or a Redfin link and saying, this looks like a great house, and you touring the property and saying, look at the kitchen, look at the bathroom. There's no value in that, right? Like a chimpanzee can do that. So what else can you do to add value? How can you really, provide for a client long-term and not be so myopic that you're just thinking about one deal and counting the commission before the deal closes? You got to think real long-term in this business. And if you want to be a true fiduciary and a consummate professional, you have to treat the business like such, because there's a lot of fly-by-night agents that, say they do it full-time, but they're really doing it part-time, and maybe they sell one deal and then they take off for a little while and they come back to sell another one to re-up the bank account. But that's not really a tried and true way to do this. It's not just a one-person job. And I would really dig in and try to understand the back end and the infrastructure of how this business works, and make sure you're applying that on a daily basis. Because if not, people like John Grauman are going to eat your lunch. And it's imperative to know that there's really good, confident, and sophisticated, capable agents out there. And if you're not going to be one of them, the cream always rises to the top. So put your best foot forward.
Great advice. I mean, great advice, and definitely applies to anything. I think that adding value is foremost one of the most important things to do in any industry, especially when it comes to real estate, because it's a very saturated market. And how you stand out from everyone else, it comes down to the specific formula of how can I add value. So great words of advice. I really appreciate you, Adam. I know that you have also a busy day ahead in Los Angeles. Keeping with everything that is going on, whenever you come down here to Miami, we'll definitely see how we can do more exciting things together. And for people that want to connect connect with you or want to learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you?
So right here on Instagram, I'm really engaged with people that reach out. Post the show, obviously a ton of messages came in, but for those that kind of follow or reach out, somebody takes the time to write something thoughtful and respectful, I always try to respond. So I'm happy to engage there. Otherwise, GraumanRosenfeld.com is our website, or just the agencyre.com. Easy ways to find me. And just want to say, Alvaro, thank you so much for taking the time to sit and have this conversation with me today. I think you know how much respect and admiration I have for you. I think the world of you. I love what you do, and really looking forward to seeing and hanging with you again, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
All right, buddy.
Appreciate you.
Soon. You got it. Bye, guys.